Hi, Prachi. How are you?
Hi, Shikha. I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, and I'm glad that we're here for another conversation.
Me too. I want to say hello to everyone. And I also want to say that today's episode is centered around a tragic event that has shaken all our lives because it has shown us an ugly side of humans that we neither expect nor want to see. We are talking about the tragic end of Atul Subhash, who became a scapegoat for a lot of people and for the legal and social system. Today, we will dive into the prevalent opinions about his suicide and its impact on various stakeholders from a psychological perspective.
So, Prachi, one thing that we've seen across all platforms and all the conversations that I've been hearing and following, there are very polarized views around this, right? Almost extremes. This whole thing several years back, we had the Me Too that was spoken about and talked about all the ways in which women face harassment at different levels at work and all the other places, homes, etc. And now we hear about men too, right? So, what do you, as a psychologist, where do you think this really comes from? Why do we have to take to extremes and have these divide that's created in the name of any incident that takes place, right? There's always the extremes that's spoken about. So, what is your views in this case from your standpoint?
Um, I think there are two aspects to this question that I would answer. One aspect is to figure out why people get divided into these stark categories
Hmm.
psychologically.
Yeah.
And the second aspect has to do with the psychology of evil, actually.
Hmm.
So, talking about the divide of between clusters of people into good and bad, uh, as an angry reaction first.
Hmm.
Um, it's not enough to say not all men or not all women and expect people to understand. I think one has to really look at the purpose that this kind of categorization serves in such emotionally charged events. As humans, we have always lived between idolizing and demonizing.
Hmm.
It's a psychological phenomenon that wants to paint an black and white or an all
Yeah.
or nothing picture,
Hmm.
because deep down we believe or we feel rather that it makes things controllable, predictable, and therefore
Hmm.
safe.
Yeah.
Uh, it comes from evolutionary times, to be honest. So, for example, it is easier for a woman to move with the assumption that all men are untrustworthy
Hmm.
and put the men in her life through an elimination process rather than
Hmm.
treat every man on an individual basis and test it out.
Yeah.
That feels like too much work.
Hmm.
Same thing happens for men. Whenever something so emotionally charged happens, it is very easy for them to go down a spiral of assigning a category to women.
Hmm.
It temporarily allows for an acceptable outlet for our rage also.
Yeah.
You're lashing out against this whole cluster that is being represented as bad or black or
Hmm.
evil.
Hmm.
And it also gives us a temporary feeling of safety because we think that now we know how to protect ourselves. Okay, now
Yeah.
these are the bad people and this is what we don't have to do. I mean, there's a lot of material right now on the internet,
Hmm.
lists and lists of the kind of women you should not marry, or what happens with when such and such woman comes into your life, all of that. So
Yeah.
basically, I think temporarily creating this feeling of safety because now I can predict.
And belonging, probably that, oh, this is this community which is against this community.
Yes,
So I am part of that community. And so I have a better sense of belonging and, which as
absolutely.
social creatures we do want, right? All the time.
True, true. And it's kind of, this defense mechanism that we will build.
Hmm.
Okay, ठीक है, now I can predict this, so I know what to do.
Hmm.
That's why we see a complete demonizing of one cluster of people whenever there is a big event. Secondly, talking about the psychology of evil, and I'm saying evil because what has happened with him was evil.
Hmm.
We have to know that it is a very human trait to commit atrocities on another human if they have
Hmm.
the power.
Yeah.
One of the earliest studies on the psychology of evil was the Stanford prison experiment,
Mm.
where people were divided into groups of prisoners and guards from the same class of
Yeah.
students. And I think a lot of us have heard of it,
Yeah.
right? And by the end of the experiment, the same classmates were subjecting each other to unthinkable torture
Harassment. Yeah.
just because they could.
Yeah.
In fact, they had to abort the experiment because it was getting out of hand.
Mm.
So I always emphasize that inflicting abuse is a human tendency. It is always about exerting power and control.
Yeah.
It has no gender, it has no scale. We cannot categorize abuse on the basis of less and more.
Mm.
And every act,
Mm.
every single act has to be considered important.
Yeah.
But that said, I think in this day and age, I also think social media plays a big role
Oh, yeah, it does. Yes.
in
Huge.
fueling our emotions and how things
Mm.
unfold eventually.
Mm.
What are your thoughts on how social media is playing a part in this entire incident?
Yeah, I think a huge part. See, if we start from where it really started from, where everybody got to know about when he spoke about why is he intending to do what he's intending to do, and where is it coming from, and the entire conversation, it
Hmm.
reached everyone because of social media. So of course, there's a huge sense of awareness which was created, and a lot of people got their voice and they spoke about it, and some of them spoke about it really well, and it allowed people to have an opinion, and hence social media is phenomenal because it's giving voice to everybody. Everybody has a voice today, but we often forget that it's social media. That means that it comes with a social responsibility, right, towards things. You can't just say that I can put up anything that I want to. Then it's a reaction. And just like in life, a reaction doesn't lead you anywhere except for creating more chaos because it's not thought through. If social media is not thought through what you're putting through, what is your intention behind it? Are you trying to just get, because a lot of people are doing things for the likes as well, the sense of validation. And if you're just driving things on that basis, then it's not going to lead anywhere. It's not going to lead to anything which is constructive. In fact, it adds to the chaos. And then today, without really knowing details, people are putting up things. And again, it's kind of fueling the entire polarized views because it's very cool to be part of a certain community and fuel the entire hatred, right? And social media kind of thrives on that. We all have a negative bias. So that's what happened with the television as well, news channels that we often spoke about, that it always talks about the negative and we latch onto it because our brains are clued on towards it. We're doing the same thing. We've cursed news channels for years together, but sitting at our homes using our social medias to spread hatred, we are pretty much doing the similar thing. So the plus and the minus of it is, yes, today a lot of good people have got a voice, they are being heard. And I wish that in his case, in Atul's case, I wish that social media could have been leveraged before everything happened. And, before things went through to the stage that it did, that somebody had to lose their life. I wish it was used in a way that it voiced things out, that, that it gained the momentum that it has against the judicial system and all the other things to kind of bring about a change without somebody having to go to that extreme end. But I think that's the conversation for another time. And we don't know what the state of mind was at that point of time. But yeah, I really, I mean, because we're talking about it today, I urge everyone who's listening, just take a pause before you hit the publish button, right? Before you hit the share button, just take a moment and just understand, why are you doing this? Is it really contributing to something which brings meaning or a change that is necessary? Or is it just fueling things because everyone's talking about it? So I must have an opinion on it. It's not
Absolutely.
necessary.
Absolutely. Being mindful about it. Because I feel like as humans, we also have this morbid fascination for painful stimuli like that when it
Yeah.
comes around in the social media. And there are enough and more instances of it every time there's a natural disaster or there's like a terrorism attack or anything like
Mm.
that. The most gory details are the ones that are circulated the most.
Yeah.
We have a recent example of an accident where 6 people lost their lives.
Yeah.
People really wanted to see the ugliest of
The
pictures
videos, yeah.
and content. So I think there's some kind of a morbid fascination, and like
Mm.
you rightly said, that there is probably a FOMO element there, that oh,
Yeah.
I have to be a part of this. I have to say something just for the heck of it.
Yeah. Because if
And
I haven't, then I missed out on things.
yeah,
But it's
absolutely.
not necessary to have a point of view about everything, right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
it's absolutely okay to say that, I choose to not comment on this
Hmm.
because maybe I don't know enough, or maybe I don't know if I have enough to contribute to this.
Absolutely. And not saying anything does not mean that you're not supporting
Feeling
the
it
fight
or feeling it.
or feeling it. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I mean, it could simply be out of respect for a person and their
Mm.
privacy, or,
Yeah.
protecting the details of their life or something
Yeah.
like that. And
Or
everybody.
even your own experience coloring it, right? I mean, if somebody
Yeah,
had a similar bad experience in their life, and we know that that bias can come in really quickly,
absolutely.
right? So we could just have our conversation or what we are putting out, having a sizable amount of followers. We
Mm.
might just say things because it's coming from our experience and we're generalizing it. It
Yeah,
it doesn't serve any purpose. So, it's very, very important to be mindful in things like these.
absolutely. You
And it
should
really can.
absolutely fight. You should fight for the cause and everything, but do it by being, mindful about what you are bringing to the fight.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what, like, we were having this conversation, and I think we were speaking about it, that a bias, even if it's positive towards someone else, is still a bias. You're still generalizing, and we don't want to fuel that thing. It doesn't serve anyone. But
Mm.
another interesting aspect, Prachi, that I've noticed is when the entire conversation was happening, and a lot of people said that, oh, they should have gone to a therapist, or he should have gone to a therapist, or he should have taken help or spoken about it from a mental health perspective, and that's always said when something like this happens. Why
Yeah.
not? Why did you not take support? What is your analysis as a clinical psychologist, bring you to a conclusion to, or, what do you think? Maybe not even a conclusion, but what do you think about this whole thing?
So, I've been in practice for 18 years, and toxic and abusive relationships are my primary specialty. So, I always follow such incidents very closely. And in answer to your question, now I'm going to say something that a lot of psychologists and mental health activists won't like,
Mm,
even though I'm a therapist myself. In this case, I don't think it was primarily a mental health issue, and I'll tell you why.
mm,
First, let's talk about couples counseling.
yeah.
Couples counseling helps when there is a breakdown in communication patterns, or past trauma is casting a shadow on the two partners and the relationship, and there is clear intent to heal and repair. This case is a clear case of the intent to extort and gain money through unfair resources.
Mm,
So, how is this a relationship problem? It's
yeah.
not a relationship
Yeah.
problem. That's why a couples therapist would have barely had any scope to help here.
Mm,
In fact, couples therapy is not recommended in a lot of cases of active abuse, and the first
mm,
advice is always to exit first,
yeah.
then attempt to heal or recover.
Mm,
There are also enough and more instances where therapists have been manipulated by partners with ulterior motives who show
mm,
up in just to gather more weapons against their partner.
yeah.
So, couples therapy, was this a case for it? No. Now, let's see if if an individual therapist would have helped in this case.
Mm,
Honest answer, maybe. I work with men often in therapy who were in similar situations. But the only way I could contribute was to help them sustain their resilience and
yeah.
act as a sounding board.
Mm,
Rest of the choices they had to make with their legal team and their family.
mm,
In this case, also, if you look carefully at the people around Atul who are being interviewed now, he had a support system,
yeah.
social support system in place.
Mm,
People who were well aware of what was happening with him. There were friends and there was family. So
mm,
there were people he could talk to and share with. We cannot undervalue the importance of having a supportive family and friend system. It's
yeah.
very crucial,
Very
and
crucial. Yeah.
he seems to have that.
Mm,
Also, let's not forget he was under severe financial duress.
mm,
In a situation like this, thinking about therapy is not something that occurs to most people,
yeah.
because this is a survival situation. You have to
Mm,
keep the fight mode on.
mm,
So if he had sought therapy, I think the best it could have done for him was probably create another pillar of support.
Yeah.
Could that have made a crucial difference? Maybe yes.
Hmm. Yeah. So, a lot of people, again, in this case, also have been talking about the other side of it. So, when I'm speaking to a lot of friends and, who've seen the videos, etc., and saying that he didn't seem like there was any depression because he's
Mhm.
so clear in his thoughts and, it's so, stated just step by step, if not this, then this, and all of those things, right? And so people are saying that there was no hint of depression as such. Then why and how come such an extreme step? How what do you kind of think about that?
Um, it's hard, honestly, to say whether he was depressed or not, because sometimes depression is quite masked also,
Hmm.
and again, when you're in fight mode, a lot of there's no time to feel a lot of feelings.
Yeah.
Uh, I can definitely estimate that he must have a lot of distress for sure,
Hmm.
and probably a feeling of running out of options, despair that, okay,
Hmm.
okay, this door doesn't work, this door doesn't work, this door doesn't work. So
Hmm.
that can create a sense of helplessness, I think.
Hmm.
However, from as far as I can analyze by looking at his statement and other things, his decision to end his life is a well planned, well thought action, more as a retaliation to the system.
Hmm.
It does not seem like a product of hopeless depression where they just want to end the pain.
Hmm.
Most people who take this extreme step is the thought process always is that, oh, I can't take it anymore.
I'm done. Yeah.
I'm done, and
Hmm.
I may not want to like end my life, but this seems like the only option to end the pain that I'm feeling.
Hmm.
But in his case, even though it may seem like a last resort option, it still has a very clear intent. He has chosen an action in order to set something in motion, which,
Hmm.
I mean, all of us are a witness to, and it did
Hmm.
achieve that.
Hmm.
So I'm not sure about the whole depression aspect, to be
Hmm.
honest.
Yeah, and I kind of, that's what it seems like. It doesn't have to be a prolonged depression, or it doesn't have to be a clinically proven kind of condition. Sometimes it can be an act of, how do we say, rage, or to kind of stand up against something, and that seems like it's worth giving my life for, kind of a thing. Again, having a
Yeah.
support system is absolutely essential, but as we say, we humans have so many different reactions at so many times, right? And that's the thing about reactions that I was speaking about. Sometimes they're so extreme, and we really don't kind of think through them, and something just takes over us, and we just give
Yeah.
into that. So yeah.
And also, I think something to keep in mind is that when anger builds and rage builds, aggression is not far behind, right?
Hmm.
So aggression can be externalized or internalized.
Hmm.
So when aggression is externalized, it takes the form of violence.
Yeah.
But when it is internalized, it can take the form of self damage.
Hmm.
And sometimes, if the impulse is strong enough, it can lead to the end of life. Going by, what we know so far, it doesn't seem like an impulsive act in this case. It looks like he's taken the time to think about it, put in all the evidence together and all of that, and then take the final step.
Hmm.
But I wouldn't be surprised if it definitely is internalized aggression.
Hmm.
There must be so much anger that was building up in him, and eventually when there was no uh, acceptable release for it, there was no release with justice for it, because anger as an emotion is always about seeking justice.
Yeah.
Then probably that aggression with nowhere to go, it got
Hmm.
internalized, and this is probably how the outcome came about.
Yeah.
And that is why there is always and a lot of people are also saying that But then there are so many people who get caught in similar situations, legal battles, which go on for years and years, and they become penniless, and they're fighting for their kids and things like that. But not everybody takes a step like this. And that's true. That is where the whole difference of individual factors come in. Why does one person choose this and another doesn't? Is something
So
which
personal.
requires a
Yeah.
psychological autopsy, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And in all of this, I think I just want to clarify for everyone listening, we're nowhere saying that what happened was not big enough or is not severe enough.
Yeah.
It is something which is not okay. Absolutely not okay. I mean, that's not how anybody deserves to be treated at all. But it's just that, we also want to bring to highlight to the fact that there are so many different ways in which people work and operate and think and act that it is it's not right to generalize it, and especially based on like a community or a gender or a religion. I think when we tend to do that, we're just not doing it the right way, because it's boils down to the level of an individual, you know. So I think one thing for sure that we can, agree to is the fact that even though this kind of psychological harassment is not happening to everyone, but it is happening to a lot of people also.
Yes.
Some people are speaking about it, some are not speaking about it. So, what message can we today, because we're here talking to everyone, leave for them? What would you want to tell them?
I think this part is the reason that I wanted to have this conversation today also, because what Atul has set in motion will go a long way, but there has to be a message out of it in terms of bringing something to the people who might be in similar situations, and maybe giving them something here which can prevent another tragic end like this.
Yeah.
So if hearing the details of Atul Subhash's case has rung a bell for you, and it has helped you acknowledge that you too might be under similar duress, then here are some steps that you need to take immediately. First, gather a support system that is trustworthy and that offers rational advice and observations. Stay away from people who will only want to fuel your emotions or gather gossip material without offering anything useful. This is very, very important. Even though talking to such people sometimes feels like I'm getting a lot of validation,
Yeah.
but it doesn't really yield anything in the long run. In fact, you'll find yourself
In the loop.
trapped in a lot of circular
Yeah.
thought and not get anywhere. So that's first. Second, start talking to a few lawyers to consider your opinions and options. Talking to a lawyer doesn't mean that you're committing to the process, because a lot of people that I suggest this to immediately get overwhelmed, like as if because I've gone and spoken to the lawyer, now I'll have to move forward. Sometimes it can happen also that the lawyer can be a little bit overbearing and they kind of, want to create the sense. See, but remember, the control is always with you. The choice is always with you. So talk to a few lawyers and consider this an information gathering exercise. Talk to multiple lawyers to compare your options and their approaches. Because, Atul wasn't wrong. There is a lot of underhanded stuff happening in the legal system. I have, I'm witness to something like this. I went through the courts for my own divorce earlier this year, and just there I happened to overhear this exchange between somebody who had actually come to explore options. She wanted to file for divorce. It was a woman who wanted to file, and she just wanted to talk to the lawyer and see what the process is like. And the lawyer just told her, ठीक है, it's very simple, कर देंगे false case, and जब उनको प्रॉब्लम होगा छूटने के लिए वो करेंगे, हम सेटलमेंट में अच्छा खासा सेटलमेंट कर लेंगे, इससे आपका काम जल्दी हो जाएगा. The woman got so scared and she just left. She said, no, this is not what I want to do right now. None of this happened and I don't want to do this. And she left. And I'm very sure that this would have set back her intention to even do something about whatever she was going through. by months, if not years.
Yeah.
It has happened with my male clients also. Some of them, when they have spoken to lawyers, they have given them all kinds of false charges that they can put against the
Mm.
partner that they want to wanting to separate from. And these men have wanted to stick to what is the real issue and just get it done in an honest way.
Mm.
So it will be very important. It's very cutthroat, no doubt. So you'll have to
Mm.
be very cautious about talking to many people, getting proper quotes, getting their approaches, their ideas, and all of that before you sit
Mm.
down with a decision. It's not a commitment. It's like आप डॉक्टर के पास गए, आप डॉक्टर को ट्राई कर रहे हो, उन्होंने दवाई लिख दी तो दवाई लेना कोई जरूरी नहीं है,
Yeah.
राइट? बट आपको पता तो चलेगा कि क्या
Mm.
ऑप्शंस हैं आपके.
Mm.
Third point, and this is from a mental standpoint, and I want to highlight this, please get out of the guilt trap that may be set for you by your partner or their family.
Mm.
It is most likely a tactic and it is not worth destroying yourself over. I have had many cases where, despite clear abuse perpetrated by the wife, the husband was kept under the guilt that it would be cruel of him to think about leaving her.
Yeah.
Don't get into that. And finally, if there is a lack of supportive people around you, if you don't have enough people to just sound ideas off of, then find a good therapist who has expertise in toxic and abusive relationships, because it will allow you to process your fears, apprehensions in a neutral space. You will also get a very realistic feedback
Yeah.
on uh, the guilt, the shame, the confusion that you might
Mm.
be experiencing and wondering if I'm taking the right decision, not decision. There'll be a lot of clear, objective feedback that will come your way.
Yeah.
There's no harm in finding someone like that.
Mm.
I also want to add a little note for those who are in the early stages of a relationship,
Mm.
but are seeing some warning signs, but not sure what to make of it.
Mm.
It doesn't look as huge as what was
Huge.
happening with him, but something doesn't feel right in your gut. So some signs I'm going to list and tell you, and if that's happening, then you need to become a little bit cautious. First sign is if you see a clear power dynamic in your relationship where one person is always dominating without feeling any remorse, and the other person is always feeling helpless and victimized, then there is clear potential for abuse.
Mm.
It may already be happening or it may start anytime soon. Second, if everything is becoming about money constantly, that is also a red flag.
Mm.
And finally, if there is constant interference and over involvement from the dominating partner's family, even in private matters like sexuality and all of that, and often with an intent to coerce or control, that is a huge red flag. There is clear indication that something or the other is going to happen drastically in this relationship. So
Yeah.
if any of these signs is happening in your relationship, it's time to sit up and take notice. And this actually might be a very good time to talk to an experienced psychologist preemptively, because here you will get more clarity before things actually go downhill.
Down the south. Yeah. So, yeah, I think these are great pointers. I'm sure it's going to get people to think again, think in a positive way to bring a positive change and be mindful about it. And again, we've spoken about, this whole case is so rooted in social media and now the rage and, the way things are being spoken about. So, a leaving note for everyone again on that bit. Just be mindful and, how are you choosing to show up? It's very easy to sit in our rooms and type something and write things and spread rage, have polarized opinions because nobody's going to come and catch us, right? It's not happening. But somebody might be reading it. It might be fueling something. It might be causing distress to someone. And the last thing that we want to do in these cases is to cause more distress, to cause more triggers. So just be very, very mindful that social media comes with social responsibility. So be very mindful in what you type. Take a moment and don't add to the chaos. If you don't have anything to say, don't say anything, but don't add to the chaos. I think that's something that I definitely do want to say as a closing to everything that we've kind of spoken about?
Absolutely. Social media gives you a lot of power, and we have to use that power responsibly. Now is a good time. Something has been set in motion. Let's let the fight play out.
Yeah.
Let's be a part of it in the best way possible.
Mm.
That someone else doesn't have to, go through this again. And
Yeah.
we can end this with, expressing our distress on how it had to happen like this for people to
Yeah.
take notice.
Yeah.
And who knows if this is still enough.
Yeah.
Um, I definitely think the legal system also needs to relook at how things are really translating into courtrooms.
Mm.
And we sincerely hope that no one else needs to pay the price of lopsided systems with their
Yeah.
life.
Yeah, because I think the human factor again comes in play there as well. It's whatever at the end of the day, it's being run by people who have emotions, their own biases. They come in from their own places of judgment, greed, so many things, right? I mean, we can't separate the emotion from the human. So I hope we are able to bring in a change, and I hope we all stand for the change instead of standing against men and women. I think we all must come together, really, and this is really the time to kind of really bring about a change which is positive. And we really hope and pray this doesn't happen to anyone. And if somebody listening, uh there has ever been a thought in your mind around this, um take help, speak to someone, get in a conversation, and please be reminded that nothing really is more important than your life. And it's really not worth it. Your life, you are worth everything. So I think that's something that we wanted to really talk about today, and it's caused us a lot of distress to hear this. But I'm glad that we get to share this conversation with all of you.
Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for listening to this episode. And if you think the pointers mentioned here could help someone please pass on the message, share the video, or get them to get in touch. Whatever helps, we are here for
Yes,
you.
we are here for you. Thank you, Prachi. And thank you, everybody, for listening. Take care of yourselves. You are deserving and you're worthy of everything that life has to offer. Thank you so much.